welcome back to the deep end. I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Oh, maybe not if you're driving.
Right, good point. Don't do that if you're driving. But if you're safe, close them. Imagine it's 1964. Late summer. You're drifting into early fall. You're in a small town called Elmira in upstate New York. It's raining outside. That really heavy, humid kind of rain that makes the pavement steam.
I can picture it.
You are sitting in a modest living room, and the air is thick. I mean, not just with humidity, but with incense.
A lot of incense.
Enough incense to make your eyes water. And there's a couple at the table, Jane Roberts and her husband, Robert Butts. But they aren't eating dinner.
No, they're waiting.
It sets a hell of a scene, doesn't it?
It really does. It sounds like the start of a, I don't know, a noir film or a ghost story.
Definitely a ghost story vibe. But here's the twist. They aren't holding hands and chanting. They're conducting what looks like a science experiment gone wrong.
And that is exactly where we are going today.
We are diving into the early sessions, Book 3 of the Seth material. Specifically, the sessions recorded between September 1964 and April 1965.
This is a really, really crucial window in the history of the Seth material.
How so?
It's right on that edge where the whole phenomenon is transitioning from, weird parlor trick into this massive, complex philosophical system.
And before we get lost in the metaphysics, because trust me, we are going to get lost in the best way possible. We have a mission.
We do.
We're going to unpack this specific volume, which is just this amazing blend of high strangeness, some surprisingly dry humor, and very practical experiments in consciousness.
And we should probably mention, strictly for the record, that this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Absolutely. We're here to analyze and discuss the text.
That's it.
And huge credit to the New Awareness Network for publishing this. If you want to understand where the later, much more famous Seth books came from, you have to look at these early sessions.
You really do. It's like seeing the blueprints before the skyscraper is built.
That's a great way to put it. And what stands out about Big 3 in particular is the tone. It's relaxed, it's definitely chilling in parts, but it's also genuinely funny.
The humor is what caught me off guard.
Me too. You expect a spirit guide or a non-physical entity to be all somber. I bring you greetings from the beyond.
Right, very serious.
But Seth is sassy.
He really is. He's witty. And that wit serves a function, which we'll get into. It's not just him being entertaining. It's a teaching tool to get Jane and Rob to loosen up.
Let's start with that scene I mentioned, the incense. This is session 86, September 9, 1964. Tell me about the copper, because this reads like a comedy sketch.
It absolutely does. So you have Jane and Rob and their friend Bill McDonnell. They're deeply curious, but they are also very much amateur experimenters.
Okay.
They'd read in some parapsychology journals that negative ions were conducive to psychic ability.
Negative ions, like what you get from a salt lamp today.
Exactly that idea. The theory was that a negatively charged atmosphere would help the signal come through clearer. So, Rob, who Seth calls Joseph, decides to engineer this.
He goes to the hardware store.
He goes to the hardware store and buys rolls of copper sheeting.
Rolls of it.
Rolls. They unroll this shiny metal all across the dining table. They have copper strips hanging around. And then they light the incense to, I guess, thicken the air or something.
Just picture that. You walk into your friend's house, there's metal foil everywhere, it smells like a temple, and everyone is sitting there with these deadly serious faces.
And then Jane goes into a trance, her voice changes, she takes off her glasses, Seth is there, and he takes one look at this setup, figuratively speaking, of course, since he's using Jane's eyes.
Of course.
And he just destroys them.
I get the quote right here. He doesn't say, "Oh, thank you for the lovely energy boost."
No.
He says, "I appreciate the many and varied preparations made this evening for my expected arrival." You can just hear the sarcasm dripping off the page.
And then he follows up with the knockout punch. He says, "Next, you will undoubtedly suggest that I pose, contemplate what might pass for my navel, carve a likeness, and set it up in the middle of your table."
Contemplate what might pass for my navel.
Yeah.
That is such a specific and brilliant dig.
It is.
He's basically mocking the whole guru aesthetic, right? The whole idea of work.
He's telling them, I am not a mystic caricature. I am an intelligent consciousness. I don't need you to build a shrine for me.
But did the copper actually help? I mean, from a physics perspective, did it do anything?
Well, later in the session, Seth jokes about that too. He says that for the copper to actually change the ionization of the room enough to matter,
Yeah.
they would have to line the walls, the ceiling, and the floor with it.
So basically turn the room into a Faraday cage.
Exactly.
So the table strips were useless.
Physically, pretty much useless. But psychologically, Seth admits that what you think will work.
Ah, the placebo effect.
Sort of. If Rob believed the copper was a battery, his own belief would help generate the energy. But Seth finds the trappings, the props, ridiculous. He calls them impediments later on.
It establishes this dynamic right away. Seth isn't a scary ghost. He's more like that brilliant, slightly arrogant professor who thinks your science fair project is cute, but ultimately, kind of silly.
And that dynamic is so complicated by Jane herself. We have to remember, Jane Roberts, Rubert, as Seth calls her, was not a believer.
Which is the wildest part of this whole story. She's the one speaking the words, but when she comes out of trance, she's the biggest skeptic in the room.
The text describes her as a hard-headed friend and a well-known doubter. She constantly needs proof. She's always worried she's just making it all up.
And this leads to some of the genuinely spookier moments in Book 3. The physical transformations.
Right. There are multiple accounts in these sessions, particularly around session 98 and 102, where witnesses claim Jane's face literally changes.
Changes how? Like she's just making a different expression.
No, much more than that. Bill McDonald describes her eyes turning opaque white, or her jawline shifting. Her entire physical cast seems to morph into a completely different person.
Wow.
Sometimes a man, sometimes an older woman.
See, that is where I would leave the room. Incense and copper, I can handle that. My friend's face melting into a different face? That's a bit too much for me.
It is terrifying on a visceral level, and Seth addresses it. He calls them physical effects. He basically admits, I'm doing this to prove a point to Rubert.
To Jane.
He distorts the physical image just enough to startle her ego into accepting that something real is happening here.
So he's doing it to shut her up, to stop her doubting.
In a way, yes. He says he doesn't like doing it. He thinks it's a cheap trick.
A party trick.
Yeah. But because Jane is such a doubting Thomas, he has to throw her a bone, or in this case, a shifting face, every now and then to keep the channel open.
Okay, so we have the atmosphere, we have the skepticism. Now I want to get into the mechanics, because Book 3 isn't just about party tricks. Seth starts laying out a very complex system of how reality actually works.
He does.
And he uses a term that I found really confusing at first, mental enclosures.
This is where we have to slow down and really look at the physics he's proposing. It gets pretty dense.
He uses an analogy in session 86. He calls it the copper tube. Walk me through this, because I tried to visualize it, and I ended up feeling like I was in a plumber's nightmare.
It's actually a brilliant analogy for focus.
Yeah.
So Seth asks you to imagine a copper tube.
Okay.
Now imagine your ego, the conscious you that is talking to me right now, is sitting inside that tube.
Got it. I am in the tube.
One end of the tube is open to the physical world. That's where you see the microphone, the table, the rain outside. The other end of the tube is connected to the inner self, the big multi-dimensional consciousness that you really are.
So I'm the bridge, the connection point.
You're the connector. But here's the problem. If both ends were wide open all the time, you would be flooded. You'd have data coming from the physical world and data coming from the inner dimensions simultaneously.
Right. You couldn't focus on driving a car or tying your shoes.
It would be total sensory overload. Exactly. Yeah. So Seth says we create a mental enclosure. We deliberately cap the inner end of the tube.
Build a wall.
We build a wall so we can focus entirely on the physical end.
Wait, hold on. If we block off the inner self, isn't that a bad thing?
Yeah.
In most spiritual circles, the goal is to connect to the inner self, not wall it off. Why would Seth say we need a mental enclosure to block it?
That's a fantastic catch, and it does sound completely counterintuitive. But Seth argues that for the ego to survive in this specific physical gravity, it needs that containment.
Okay.
Think of it like a pressure washer.
Pressure washer?
Yeah. If you just let water flow out of a regular hose, it's a gentle trickle. But if you restrict the opening, if you enclose it, the pressure builds up and it shoots out with incredible force.
I see where you're going with this.
Seth says the mental enclosure allows us to build up psychic pressure, and we need that pressure to project our thoughts into physical matter.
So the enclosure isn't a prison, it's a cannon, a focusing lens.
A focusing lens, that's perfect. And this leads to the mechanism of creation. He introduces a concept he calls mental enzymes.
Yes. Mental enzymes.
Yeah.
This sounded like pure sci-fi jargon to me. What exactly is a mental enzyme? Is it a chemical?
No, and this is where he gets very, very technical. He says, ideas are electrical.
Electrical, like a literal spark in the brain.
Pure mental electricity. But a thought, which is electricity, cannot just become a chair, which is matter. They are different mediums.
Right.
You need a transducer. You need something to convert the signal from one form to another.
Okay, that makes sense.
The mental enzyme is that converter. Seth explains that when you have a thought with enough intensity, it triggers these mental enzymes.
It what?
These enzymes act as a catalyst. They spark a reaction that turns that raw psychic electricity into a physical pattern.
So it's like an assembly line. Thought triggers electricity. Electricity triggers enzyme. Enzyme builds matter.
That's the manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
He literally uses that exact term. He says we are constantly receiving energy from the inner self, pressurizing it in our mental enclosure, and then blasting it out as the physical world.
That implies that nothing is really out there independently. The table, the copper sheets, the rain, we are manufacturing it moment by moment.
We are projecting it. And he goes even further in session 87. He starts talking about capsule comprehension.
That phrase stuck with me. Capsule comprehension.
He's saying that this awareness isn't just a human thing. The atoms that make up this table, they have a capsule of consciousness. They know they are atoms.
So they have a limited, enclosed comprehension of their own existence.
Precisely.
So the copper sheets on the table were aware they were copper sheets.
In their own way, on their own level, yes. Seth says there is no such thing as dead matter. Everything is consciousness, held together by these mental enzymes.
This is completely mind-bending. But if we are creating reality from the inside out, I have to ask the obvious question. When? When do we do this? Because it feels like the world is already here when I wake up in the morning.
And that leads us to the biggest, most difficult hurdle in the Seth material.
Time.
Time. He calls it the spacious present.
The spacious present. I love that term.
In sessions 95 and 96, Seth starts completely tearing down the concept of linear time. He says the past, present, and future are illusions caused by our mental enclosure.
He says, and I'm quoting from session 135 here, basically the future is in existence now, and the past has never been swept away.
Never been swept away. Just think about that for a second. We usually think of time like a road we're driving on.
Sure.
The past is the road behind us. It's gone. The future is the road ahead. It hasn't been built yet.
Right. Yes, the standard model.
Seth says no. Imagine you are in a giant house. You are currently standing in the living room. That's the present. The kitchen is the past. The bedroom is the future. Just because you are in the living room doesn't mean the kitchen disappeared. It's still there. You just aren't focused on it.
So all the rooms exist simultaneously.
Yes. And you can walk between them if you know how. This is what he calls the spacious present. It's roomy. It holds everything at once.
If the past hasn't been swept away, that completely changes how we view memory. And it totally changes how we view dreams.
It does.
Because in book 3, dreams are a huge topic.
They are pivotal. Seth insists that dreams are not just brain garbage. They aren't just random neurons firing while you sleep. He claims the dream state is a valid, objective universe.
An objective universe. That's a very strong claim.
He means it's just as real as this one. We have a dream self that operates there. We solve problems there. We build things there.
There is a story in session 87 that really brings this home. Jane had these vivid, recurring dreams. In one, she's an old woman in Boston.
Yes, an old medium living in Boston.
And she's dying of cancer. Jane wakes up absolutely terrified because she, the real Jane, was having some health anxiety at the time. She thought, is this a prophecy? Am I going to get cancer?
A completely natural fear. But Seth analyzes it and says, no, this isn't a prophecy. This is a memory.
A memory. Of what?
He explains that Jane is picking up a bleed-through from another portion of her own identity. She was a medium in Boston in a past life, though he would say a simultaneous life.
Okay.
And that woman did die of cancer.
So why was Jane dreaming about it now? What was the trigger?
Because of the resonance. Jane's current anxiety about her health vibrated at the same frequency as that past life's experience. The barrier between the rooms of the house got thin. She could hear the TV playing in the other room, so to speak.
So her subconscious wasn't warning her. It was comforting her. Is that right?
In a really weird way, yes. It was saying, hey, we already did this. We went through the scary illness. We died. And look, we are still here. We survived death.
That is a completely different way to look at nightmares.
It is. It frames them as data, as information from other parts of your multidimensional self.
You just mentioned multidimensional. We have to talk about maybe the weirdest sci-fi concept in this whole book,
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
the universe of negative matter.
Session 118. This is where Seth sounds like a theoretical physicist from, like, the 22nd century.
He describes a companion universe to ours, but he calls it negative matter. Is he talking about antimatter, like in Star Trek?
It's similar, but he seems to be talking more about polarity. He suggests that our system creates a byproduct, a shadow system. In this other universe, time might run backward, or the cohesion of matter works completely differently.
It reminds me of the Upside Down from Stranger Things, but maybe less slimy.
Maybe. But the point he's making is that our physical reality is just one channel on the radio. There are other stations playing completely different songs right next to us. We just can't hear them because our mental enclosure blocks the signal.
This all leads to the question that always hangs over these sessions. Who is the DJ? Who or what is Seth?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Usually Seth is very vague. He says names don't matter, identity is fluid. But in Book 3, specifically Session 108 and 110, he drops some breadcrumbs. He gives us a biography.
He does, and it's fascinating. He mentions a name, Salden.
Salden.
He describes a life as a merchant. He says he was born around 1586 and died in 1655.
What gets me about this description isn't the dates, it's the details. He talks about being a merchant who couldn't afford books.
That is such a human detail, isn't it? So relatable.
It is. We think of Seth as this booming voice of cosmic wisdom, but he's talking about a life where he was just a guy selling spice or cloth, desperate to learn, desperate to read, but he didn't have the money or the status.
And Seth says that hunger, that intense desire to learn, is what propelled his expansion after that life. He says he's no longer focused in physical reality, but he continues to grow. He isn't a god.
He's just a student.
A student who graduated and is now coming back to tutor the freshmen?
And he's not the only one. There's a moment in Session 111 that gave me literal chills. They call it the group.
This is a real tonal shift. Usually the sessions are intimate. Jane, Rob, Seth, maybe a friend. But in Session 111, Jane contacts others.
And the whole vibe changes completely. Seth kind of steps aside, and these other voices come through. Who are they?
They describe themselves as watchers or educators, but unlike Seth, who is warm and funny and sarcastic, the group feels detached, cold almost.
They felt like administrators.
Yes, cosmic bureaucrats. They imply that they observe physical reality, they help with the construction of it, but they don't get involved in the drama. They don't care about your copper sheets or your bad days.
It creates this profound sense of a crowded universe. We think we're alone in the room, but actually we're in a crowded lecture hall, and we just didn't notice all the other people standing in the back.
It's humbling, and it reinforces Seth's teaching about the ego versus the inner self. The ego thinks it's the star of the show. The inner self knows it's part of a massive ensemble cast.
Speaking of the ensemble cast, Seth says our lives are interwound.
Interwound, that's a beautiful word.
He says there are selves within selves. It means I'm not just cut off from you or from my past selves. We're all tangled up in the same cosmic yarn.
Which is why he says reincarnation isn't a straight line. It's not like you live in 1800, you die, and then you move to 1900.
Right.
All those lives are happening at once in the spacious present, and they are constantly influencing each other.
Hence, the bleeding through of the Boston Dream.
Precisely.
Now, we can't do a deep dive like this without giving the listener something to actually do. Seth isn't just theory. He gives homework. He introduces psychological time.
Or psi time. This is the practical magic of the Seth material. If you want to experience the spacious present for yourself, you have to practice this.
So how does one do psi time? Is it just meditation?
It's similar, but the intent is a little different. In sessions 104 and 105, he breaks it down. The goal is to shut off the physical senses. You close your eyes to stop seeing. You go to a quiet room to stop hearing. You sit still to stop feeling the body.
You are unplugging the physical end of the copper tube.
You are unplugging the output so you can begin to notice the input. Seth says that when you silence the physical world, you can begin to feel the electromagnetic reality behind it. You can feel the inner self.
But he gives a warning.
Yeah.
And this is where that protective, almost father figure side of Seth comes out.
He does. In session 132, he warns Jane not to go too fast. He tells her to limit these exercises.
Why? If it's so good for us, why limit it?
Because the ego is fragile. If you tear down the walls of the mental enclosure too quickly, the ego panics. It can feel like it's dying or dissolving.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be. Seth wants them to expand their consciousness, not blow a fuse.
It's about integration. You have to stretch the balloon slowly or it
Mm.
pops.
Exactly. And we see the results of this practice. Jane starts getting what they call everyday psychic hits.
The predictions. There is a great meta moment in session 146. Jane had written a book called How to Develop Your ESP Power.
Which is so ironic because she was writing it while constantly doubting she had any ESP power herself.
Right, and Seth predicts the sale of the book. He gives specific details about the publisher, the timing. And lo and behold, it happens exactly as he said it would.
It validates the material for them. It's Seth saying, look, I can handle the practical stuff too. I can help pay the bills.
Speaking of practical stuff, I
Yeah.
have to bring up the smoking. Because this is so counter to modern wellness culture.
Oh, yeah.
Jane and Rob were heavy smokers. Chain smokers, really.
It was the 60s. A lot of people were.
But you'd expect a highly evolved spirit guide to say, my children, your lungs are sacred temples. Put down the cigarettes immediately.
But he doesn't. In session 146, they discuss this. Seth admits that, yes, smoking isn't great for the biological organism. He says, sure, it's a strain. But he argues that the guilt and the worry about the smoking are actually more damaging than the nicotine itself.
That is the ultimate mind over matter argument.
It fits his system perfectly. If ideas construct reality, and you smoke a cigarette while thinking, this is poison, I am weak, I am killing myself.
You're literally programming your cells to accept damage.
Exactly. Whereas if you smoke it with enjoyment and zero guilt.
The damage is minimized. He's not saying it's healthy, to be clear.
No, not at all. He's saying that your mental state is the primary factor in your health. He even gets a little annoyed with Rob for nagging Jane about it.
He calls Rob's comments picayune. Such a great word.
He basically tells him, back off, Joseph. Let her smoke.
It's so refreshing.
Yeah.
It humanizes the whole experience. It's not about being perfect. It's about understanding the power of your own belief.
And that really is the core message of Book 3. When you strip away the copper sheets and the weird faces and the negative matter universes, what is left?
What is left is empowerment.
Exactly. Seth is telling us that the universe is open. It's not a closed box. We are the creators. We use these mental enzymes to build our world.
And we are safe. That's a huge thing I take away from this. Even with all the scary stuff, the underlying message is that we are eternal beings playing a game in a spacious present.
There is a line from session 146 that I want to read. Seth tells them, you will both find the coming seasons fulfilling. All of your energies are in ascendancy.
All of your energies are in ascendancy. That is a powerful affirmation. I might write that on my mirror.
It implies that things are always moving up. Complexity is increasing. Awareness is expanding. It's an optimistic worldview.
Now, we have been talking for a while, and we've covered a lot of ground, but I have to say this. We are just scratching the surface. The early sessions are dense.
So dense. There are thousands and thousands of pages of dialogue. We strongly encourage you not to just take our summary for it.
You really need to read the raw transcripts.
Yeah.
You need to hear the rhythm of Seth's speech for yourself.
Absolutely. So if you are intrigued by any of this, please go to the source. We encourage you to study the Seth material books. You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore.
And that URL is sethcenter.com/early sessions. Support the publishers who keep this archive alive.
It's really important work.
As we wrap up this deep dive into 1964, I want to leave you with a thought, a little experiment of our own.
I like experiments.
We talked about the spacious present. We talked about how Jane's anxiety bled through to her past self in Boston, and how that past self might have comforted her.
Right, the message across time.
So if time is simultaneous, and your past selves are still alive right now in the spacious present, what message would you send them?
Ooh, that's good.
Think of a younger version of yourself, maybe you at 10 years old or 20, someone who is struggling or scared or confused. If you could send a mental enzyme, a pulse of pure confidence or love back to them, would they feel it?
And to flip that sudden feeling of relief you felt this morning, that sudden random idea that everything is going to be okay, maybe that wasn't random.
Maybe that was a message from a future you, sitting in the spacious present, telling you that you made it through.
That changes how you look at your whole life. It's not a line, it's a web.
And we are all connected.
All connected.
Something to think about while you stare at the rain. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a real pleasure.
Good night, Seth.